Hello, here we're looking at using Scrum to make our businesses agile, and this is just an overview. In the last video, I talked about agile and how it is a mindset and a reaction to the problems of traditional project management. Here we're looking at Scrum, which is a lightweight framework for implementing agile. It was created by two of the authors of the Agile Manifesto. But first, a bit of context. This blog is for freelancers and small agencies who do it all, and so are probably implementing solutions like WordPress. For us, Scrum is probably the first one to look at. If your agency has a team of code specialists and your clients are more likely to want you to build the next Facebook, then you might already be looking at other agile frameworks such as Extreme Programming or Kanban. I don't have any reliable statistics, but Scrum is generally considered as the most widely used agile framework. It's designed for teams, but I feel it will work fine for freelancers too. I won't be applying everything that's recommended by Scrum.org. This blog is about finding our own custom ways to become agile. Some years ago, one of the contributors to the manifesto, Dave Thomas, declared Agile dead, a little bit like PHP, SEO, or more recently WordPress page builders. He still firmly believes in it, but felt businesses were buying Agile frameworks, but were applying them with a traditional mindset. Many of us will have experienced something similar with clients and digital marketing when the internet flipped everything on its head by putting the audience in control of what they consumed. We needed to move from push to pull marketing. Blogs and social media were great platforms to pull in people with engaging and helpful content, but many businesses adopted the platforms but continued with a traditional advertising or push marketing mindset. We tried it and it didn't work for us. It's something that we're very likely to hear about Agile, just as we have with content marketing. Finally, I should say that I've never knowingly been in a Scrum team. My former employers, a government department, adopted Agile, but I didn't really have any experience of it. The closest I've got is with my own trial and error tweaks to my business. So let's take a look at the Scrum workflow. There is an official diagram over at scrum.org, which I'll link to in the blog post that goes with this, which will be below this video. But I've also created my own to add in some additional components and make it more relevant to web designers. If you go to my blog post and click on the image, it will pop up full width. My explanations here are going to be very simplified because I want to keep this an overview, but hopefully you'll see from the diagram that the process starts on the left with the client's vision, which is then turned into a prioritized list, which in Scrum terms is called the product backlog. We can call it whatever we want. I'd probably use the term website wish list. I think that would make more sense. And then these items are then turned into what they call user stories as a way of making clear what needs to happen. And keeping this simple, we can just turn these into statements. Again, borrowing from Scrum, they use something like, as a persona or type of website visitor, I want to, so that. So you can understand what everyone needs to do. I'll return to this topic again because there is an alternative approach to this, which is called Lean UX, which also tests for business viability. The sprint backlog is a series of tasks which have been selected for the first or the next sprint of work, and a Scrum team is ideally very small, under 10 people, with a range of the needed skills. The idea is that it is self-organizing and the members in the team will collaborate with each other rather than stick rigidly to their own disciplines. The Scrum name isn't an acronym, it's borrowed from rugby and gives us a visual representation of the working spirit of these teams. In my case, a lot of the time it will often be just a team of two, me and the client. A third person would be my wife, and on occasions the client or I might need to bring in some additional expertise for perhaps a sprint. Scrum.org recommends 1 to 4 weeks for a sprint, with a daily Scrum, which is a stand-up meeting of maybe 15 minutes where each member says what they've done and what they are doing next. But these are really just recommendations. There's no point in going through ritual meetings, whether they're stand up or sit down, if the communication is already good and the focus is there. And there's no point in stretching out a sprint to a week if it can be done in a couple of days. There are two key roles in the Scrum team. The product manager, who could be the client or someone representing them, and the Scrum Master, who's more likely to be us. The product manager reports to the wider organization and should be able to offer valuable inputs on the business aims, the characteristics of that business, and how their customers are likely to behave. The Scrum Master's role is a bit more vague, but it really includes everything that keeps the Scrum running smoothly, so the sprint backlog is actually executed. Avidu, a new friend of mine who's produced the plugin WP Codebox, is in our Facebook group, and he has experience with Agile and was telling me that he's seen some difficulties when client representatives appoint themselves as the Scrum Master. Of course, this is a cooler name, and you can now get a certificate to become a Scrum Master in just one day. I can certainly see why that is the case with some organizations and their long-standing hierarchical culture, how the idea from Agile that everybody should be a self-determining team can unwittingly get turned into something more like traditional micromanagement. There is an outer flow to the diagram here, which is shown by the darker grey boxes, and that's made up of Scrum Planning, Review, and Retrospective. The Scrum Review is really a way of testing the results of the sprint and see if everything is working. The Scrum Retrospective is where the team come together, sometimes with higher management, to look at how things are going, and the information that comes out of that goes back into planning the next sprint, and it may impact on the actual product backlog itself. But really with this, I think we can keep it simple. This is a useful tool, but it's very easy to needlessly get lost in all of the definitions, new terminology, and their roles. Selling Agile consultancy, training, and tools is booming business. Large companies with deep pockets are keen to follow the multi-billionaire tech companies and go Agile. The more complex the solution sounds, the more value it has. But we can strip down the Agile workflow to something that is more like the traditional method if we want it. For example, if a client places complete trust in you to deliver the design or just part of that design and has the content ready, you could exclude them from the sprint or all of the sprints if you wanted, and then the sprint backlog would effectively just be your personal to-do list. For me, the power of having an Agile process available is that when you get a client that comes to you and you and them are really unsure about how the project should go, instead of entering into this BS negotiation over the costs on the unknown or trying to fix something which really needs to be fluid, you can just get started. For example, you might even do something simple if you've got a new client who's just started, who's apprehensive about working with you. You could just suggest that the first sprint is a fixed cost landing page where they can pay up front, and this would offer them a low risk way of seeing how you work together for both parties. It could get them something which starts earning for them out there straight away. Give them a head start on SEO and marketing efforts, and get some early data as well in. If you normally work alone with a single client, then you have a way with this of being able to incorporate other specialists should they turn up. And Scrum itself doesn't need to be complex if you look at it. It's mostly to-do lists. You don't need expensive project management tools. You could probably completely work online with Google Documents and Skype or something similar. I'll be digging into tools later, but for my follow-up post, I'd like to explain why I think being able to offer an Agile approach could help us attract more clients and allow us to stand out in a crowded industry. Without wanting to go all Da Vinci Code on you, I think the Agile Manifesto offers some clues about how we might be able to improve our own marketing messages. And even if not, many companies are clamoring to go Agile, so having this approach under our belt could make us a more attractive proposition. Anyway, I think that is enough for this time. If this is your kind of thing, please consider subscribing or even sharing this content. And thank you for your time. I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.